take it away.
Great. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. Thank y'all so much for coming. Like Angela said, my name is Renee, and I'm here today talking about control and all I have learned about control in my 10-year journey with dealing with some sort of cancer. So just to give y'all an idea of where I've been so you can relate to that I actually do know what I'm talking about. I unfortunately am kind of an expert on this subject. So a little bit of my timeline, and I tried to condense this as much as possible. In 2008, I was 30 years old. Our son was 1, and we were just living life. And then I found a lump in my right breast a day after me and my coworkers, who were like 28 and 29, I was 30, so we were all relatively young, and we were talking about giving ourselves self breast exams, and we all said no, we didn't do it. We thought we were too young to need to do it, so we didn't. Well, the next morning, while I was in the shower, that conversation came back to me, and I was like, I need to give myself my first ever self breast exam. And I did, and I felt a lump about the size of a grape in my right breast. And of course, I freaked out and thought, this isn't real. This is from breastfeeding, even though I had stopped breastfeeding like 8 months ago. But I wanted to think that it wasn't real. And so I didn't tell Eric for a day about the lump. And then when I told him, he was like, oh yeah, I feel it. It's there. Call your OB. So I started there. OB led to mammogram, sonogram, needle biopsy, led to being diagnosed with stage 1 triple negative breast cancer. And pretty much right after that diagnosis, I was sent to Dr. Hellerstadt, and you'll hear me refer to her as Dr. H throughout this presentation. And I did 4 rounds of AC and 4 rounds of Taxol, then a lumpectomy and 36 radiations. And I thought I was done. I thought, hey, I did what I needed to do. I'm done. I'm golden. I'm only 32 years old now. Life goes on. Well, it did go on for about 16 months until March 2011, when I went in for my routine CT and bone scan, and then I got the call telling me that Dr. H needs to see you this afternoon, and you need to bring Eric. And I'm like, what? One, getting a call from Dr. H saying this same day appointment, you are thinking, oh crap, something is majorly wrong. So we went in, and she told me that I had metastasized into my bones and lungs, and I needed to start treatment right away. So I did, and my first treatment was Braxane. And when you're metastatic, how it usually works is you get scanned about every 6 weeks to see if treatment is working. So I did my first round of treatment, or my first treatments. My first scan showed improvement. So yay, everybody's happy. Then my second scan showed progression, which means the cancer grew. So nobody was happy. And it was like, okay, time to change plans. And I hadn't wrapped my head around the idea of one treatment wasn't for sure gonna work like it did when I was stage 1. So this was a whole new ball game to me. And so then we moved on to a Gemzar carboplatin combo with a trial drug of a PARP inhibitor. And then I was scanned 6 weeks after starting that new combo, and the results came back NED, which is no evidence of disease. I was elated. I was on cloud 9. I was like, that was easy, I'm done. And Hellerstadt was like, no, you're not done. Like, metastatic means this is a lifelong thing that you're going to be dealing with. So that kind of, you know, shattered my hopes and dreams, but I dealt with it. And then I stayed on that that chemo for about 7 months until my counts just plummeted and I literally could not take anymore. And so Hellerstadt got permission from the trial company for me just to do the PARP inhibitor. So I was on just the PARP for a good 8 to 9 months until I had my first, they call it a seizure, but I'm not really sure it was a seizure, but it was a seizure. So it's till I had my first seizure. And my whole right side of my body went numb. And I called Eric. Eric came to get me and our son, and then, you know, we called Dr. H, and she was like, go to the emergency room. So we went to the emergency room, had an MRI of my brain, and it showed I had about a golf ball size mass in my brain. So it was too big to radiate. So I had to have brain surgery. So that was my first brain surgery in September 2012. And then I never really felt quite normal after that brain surgery. I still kind of felt wonky. And then in November of 2012, I really started feeling different. Like, I really started noticing something was different again in my leg feelings and my body control movements. And so I told H, I'm like, something's not right. And another MRI showed that the mass was back in the exact same spot. So again, I had to have brain surgery and, you know, recovered from that. And then May of 2013, same feeling, the same numbness, same loss of control, came back, and once again told H, got an MRI, and the brain tumor was back. But this time after surgery, I woke up after surgery and I remember telling Eric, it's gone. Like, I felt completely different. I felt that it was gone and I was good to go. So then fast forward to May of 2016 when H wanted me to get a bone marrow biopsy because my white counts had continuously been dropping for no good reason. I wasn't on aggressive treatment. I wasn't on anything that should be making my white counts drop like they were. So she wanted a bone marrow biopsy, which that biopsy showed that I had pre-leukemia, which, and the only way to treat pre-leukemia and or leukemia was with chemo, but the only way to cure it is a bone marrow transplant. So H pushed for a bone marrow transplant because she was like, what if you do the leukemia treatment, then breast cancer comes back, you can't be on 2 different cancer treatments at once. So she found a transplant doctor, Dr. Berryman in Dallas, who would take me on as a patient. I think like 2 or 3 doctors said no, they wanted nothing to do with me as a transplant patient. So we signed up for the donor list through Be the Match, and they found me 4 matches, which is a miracle because so many people have problems finding one match. And in October of 2016, I went to Dallas, stayed in the hospital for a month. I received 4 days of the hardest chemo I'd ever received ever. Then I had to recover for 3 days, and then I got my new blood on October 30th, 2016, and that was my transplant day. And that is now my new birthday, is what they tell me. So that, my friends, is the shortest version of this story I can tell you. But that is why I'm here today to talk to you about control and what I have learned along the way about control that has helped me and how I've tweaked it along the way. So I just want to share these insights with y'all for y'all to be able to take them and use them in your situations. So I first thought about, why is control such a big issue in our lives? And for me, it was because I felt my world was spinning out of control. Not only when I got those phone calls to tell me this news, but then all the stuff that I wanted to accomplish that I thought I had so much control on kind of flew out the window. So at those points in time, I had no control, or I felt like I had no control. And I knew I couldn't control the fact of how I felt after treatment, like the tiredness and the nausea and everything else that comes along with treatment. Now I know they can help that, but not when I was going through it. So
Great job now. There's not a lot of hope. There's not a lot of progress.
So I really had to learn that what control I had was how I responded to every single situation that was presented to me. And so after a lot of thought about this, I broke this talk down into 3 topics of control. And I like to call it the 3 P's: persistence, patience, and positive power of mind. The definition of persistence is continuing firmly in a course of action in spite of its difficulty. So, continue on although it's hard. And it's hard. And how does persistence help me stay in control? It helps me stay in control in many ways. And the examples I thought of have been art. When I was in treatment the first time, I would watch YouTube videos of people doing art. And I just became so enamored with this process of people doing art and pouring their feelings out onto paper. And it was just so beautiful to watch. So I decided, I was like, okay, if there are these videos just showing art, then I decided I'm gonna find some videos to teach me how to do art. So I did. I took some online classes, and I noticed when I was doing my art and creating, I was at peace. I was completely at peace with whatever was going on, and my mind just quieted down, and it was a real moment of control, how I could control what my mind was and was not thinking about. And every time I had to stop doing art due to being too tired from treatment, or due to, not feeling like going to the store to get supplies, or whatever reason, I was always persistent in starting it again because I knew how much it helped me. Another way I have learned to stay in control is through writing. At first I started writing. When I was first diagnosed, I started a blog to just keep all my friends and family updated, because I couldn't physically tell everybody the same story time and time again. It was daunting, and I couldn't do it. And I remember after Eric and I got the first diagnosis, and we had to tell my mom, my dad, my sister, his parents, and then we asked his parents to tell the rest of his family, because we just couldn't do it anymore. So that's why I first started writing my blog. But then it morphed into more of an online, or more of a, I don't even want to call it a diary, but a place where I could go and just word vomit everything I wanted to get out, all the worries I had, all the issues that were going on. And then I could also dream. I could write about what I hoped was going to happen for the best. And through that process, I taught myself how to write out the best case scenarios, the best case what ifs, because I learned the reality is none of us know what is going to happen at any given moment. And so I'm assuming y'all are like me, we're always running scenarios through our head as to what could happen. And it is unfortunately so much easier to run worst case scenarios through our head versus best case scenarios. So, and that's something I still struggle with. I still catch myself running a worst case scenario through my head and being like, no, we don't know all these facts. We don't know all the facts that will make up the outcome. So let's run best case scenario through my head. Another way I have learned to be persistent is with when I had my second brain tumor. I was persistent in the fact that I knew something was wrong with myself again. And luckily, Eric and Dr. H never thought I was crazy. They just went along. They're like, yeah, here's an MRI. And that, to me, that part of being persistent is a must for everybody in every situation, for you to be your own advocate and be persistent in the fact of when you know something's wrong, to share it and to tell people about it. And also be persistent in the fact of knowing your body, knowing when you feel a little glitch or a little something, and tell it, share it, so you can figure out what is wrong. And my last example of me maintaining control with persistence is when I had to learn to walk and drive again after my second brain surgery, because it left me with my right foot and leg numb. So I was determined to learn how to drive again, because to me, driving equates to control. Like, I needed to be in control of where I went, when I went there, who I was with, and not to have to rely on Eric and my friends and family all the time. I wanted control over my life. So my mom and I, man, it was probably a good 3 to 4 weeks. We would go to a church parking lot by our house and just drive. Like, I had to learn how to drive with both feet, because I couldn't brake with my right foot because I couldn't get it over in time. So I had to learn to drive with both my left and right foot. And so Mom and I would go to the church parking lot and practice. And then she would make up scenarios for me, like, oh, here's a car pulled out. You got to put on your brakes fast, or, do a 3-point turn, or not parallel park. That did not happen, because I could never do that. Just park. And my parking still is not very good, but that's okay. We get through it. And so those examples are just a few of what I have been persistent in making and regaining some sort of control back in my life. So moving on from persistence to my second P is patience. The definition of patience is the capacity to accept or tolerate trouble or suffering without getting angry. I think that's the most important part right there, without getting angry. And to me, it is without getting angry with yourself. We have to learn to be patient with ourselves. And I read a quote once about patience is, we should all treat ourselves like we treat children we love in terms of patience when we are learning new activities or doing something new. And it really clicked with me. I was like, that's funny, because when Ian was learning to tie his shoes, I would never talk to him the way I self-talk to myself, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you can't do this. Oh, here we go again. We got to start over again, or you failed again, or the mean things that we can say to ourselves. So instead of that, I started talking to myself like I would talk to Ian, like, it's okay. Get up, try again. Yeah, no, you didn't succeed this time, but get up and try again, and we will figure out a way to make this work. And it made me sad once I got that concept, and then I looked back on to how I treated myself the first time through chemo. I was not very nice to myself. I thought that I should be able to receive chemo on a Monday, and then on Tuesday bounce back and be back in mom mode to a toddler, and everything was hunky-dory. And no, that the fact of the matter is that does not happen. So it just made me realize how far I have come in learning to treat myself with patience and be kind and gentle to myself. And still, I have to remind myself, after all these years of learning these lessons, to be nice to myself and to go easy on myself. Another way to learn to have patience with yourself and have some control over your energy levels is something called the spoon theory. I read about this online. I don't know if y'all have ever read about this. If not, I would suggest Googling the spoon theory because I think it's great. But to kind of summarize it is we all start our days with X amount of spoons. And for every activity you do, it takes how many ever spoons away from your pile of spoons. So just as an example, let's say person A, I'm going to use my friend Jordan, who is a 40-year-old mom, athlete, and just general all-around ball of energy. And then me, 40-year-old mom with this trail of trauma baggage behind her. So we start our days with the same amount of spoons. Just say every 30-year-old or 40-year-old starts with 30 spoons. So for Jordan, say to get up in the morning, get ready, make lunch for the kids, get out the door, it takes her 1 spoon. 1 spoon out of her whole pile is gone. And then say for me, and maybe y'all, to get up in the morning, take a shower, and get ready, that takes me 5 spoons. So right there, right in the beginning of the day, we're on uneven playing grounds. So you cannot compare yourself to others because you don't know how many spoons they're working with or how many spoons it takes them to do certain activities. And once I realized that you cannot pour from an empty cup. When you have no energy left to give, you can't pour. You can't pour. I mean, it's physically impossible. You cannot pour from an empty cup. I really started to be able to manage my spoons more appropriately and to know when and where to use them and what was and was not important to use them on. So, and then onto my last P, and I believe this is one of the most important P's there is a positive attitude. And you might wonder what a positive attitude has to do with control, but in my experience, a positive attitude has a ton to do with control because you are in control of your attitude. No matter if you like it or not, the fact of the matter is we are all in control of our attitudes. And just as a side note, though, I want to say that having a positive attitude doesn't mean that it's rainbows and sunshine and glitter all the time. Like, you know, I think a positive attitude sometimes gets a bad rap from people who are a little too, woo, everything's gonna be okay, or it's not that bad. No, I think that it is absolutely okay and 100% necessary to acknowledge the suck. Like, if things suck, they suck, and acknowledge it and deal with it. But don't get stuck there. Don't dwell in the suck, because again, if you're diagnosed with cancer, you dwelling in it, it's not going to change the fact that you've been diagnosed with cancer. Like, you still have to deal with what is being thrown at you. So a few examples of that I have is how when I put positivity into action is when I was told I needed a match in order to receive a bone marrow transplant. And I did 2 things to try to gain control of the situation of waiting in limbo, of, I really had no control over who was on this donor list or what. So what I did was I would pretend to receive a phone call from my doctor telling me that they had a match and it was a perfect match, and they couldn't believe how quick they found me a match, because this wasn't normal. Finding a match this quick was not normal. And I did that pretend phone call, I would say at least 5 times a day, and it took 2 or 3 minutes to receive that pretend phone call and get excited about, oh my gosh, I have a match and now it's time to move on, and what do we get to do next? And then another way I did that, another way I worked was I wrote thank you letters to my whoever donor, and I told my donor how appreciative I was, and that they saved my life, and not only are they changing my life, they're changing my husband and sons and family's life, and that I had dreams and aspirations of being a speaker and telling my story and sharing what I've learned with others for them to hold on to hope, and whatever way I could help, that's what I was going to do. And look where I am today. And my final example of keeping a positive attitude was when Dr. H told me I was metastatic. Her and Eric, we were all in the room together, and she was telling me, what metastatic meant, that it's treatable but not curable, and so the odds are, and blah blah blah. And I said, I get it. I get that can be reality for 99% of people, but I'm going to choose to not hear all of these what if possibilities. And I walked out of the room for just a few minutes, and I said, Eric and H, you two feel free to talk. And I said, you two feel free to discuss all the possibilities of doom and gloom that can happen. Because, I get it. I've lost a ton of friends, so I know what can happen, but I was just choosing to not listen to it, because the fact of the matter was, whatever was going to happen in my body was going to happen. So why am I going to sit and dwell on the maybes until it's actually happening? For me, that's just a way I stay in control. Yes, it might be La La Land sometimes, but I'm pretty happy here in La La Land. And then I started playing, and then the what ifs, when the what ifs did come up, I would switch them into a what if positive. Like, what if, I never would have thought, what if I got leukemia and had new blood, and then my new blood's gonna eat the cancer if it ever comes back? Like, that's something I could have never in a million years imagined. So I did everything in my control to stay in that positive frame of mind and with my positive what ifs, because I knew if one little seed of doubt was planted in there, we all know that one seed of doubt can spiral out of control so quick, and in your head, you're dead in 2 days. We think of worst case scenarios. And again, the fact is that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So in my mind, think of the positives that can happen versus the negatives, because we don't know what's going to happen anyways. So think of the positives. And so to recap this speech on control, I want y'all to remember persistence, patience, and positive attitude. And I really hope that y'all can take something away from these tidbits, and I hope I helped y'all in some way.